The evening was warm and peaceful when Ethan Miller, one of the youngest billionaires in the city, decided to take his girlfriend Vanessa out for dinner. He wanted a quiet night. No business meetings, no phones, just a simple meal where they could relax and talk. Ethan liked small things, simple moments that reminded him of his humble beginnings before success changed his life. Vanessa, however, had very different tastes. She loved attention, fancy restaurants, and expensive clothes. For her, every night out was a chance to show off. When they arrived at the restaurant, the staff greeted them with polite smiles. The place was elegant but cozy, filled with soft music and the warm glow of hanging lights. Ethan felt at ease, but Vanessa immediately began to complain. "Why is the lighting so dim? I can't even take a proper selfie here," she said, pulling out her phone and checking her reflection in the camera. Ethan smiled politely, trying not to ruin the evening. "It's supposed to feel calm and romantic," he replied gently. "Let's just enjoy it." A few minutes later, a young waitress approached their table. Her name tag read Emma. She had kind eyes, a calm smile, and the sort of politeness that made people instantly comfortable. "Good evening," she greeted warmly. "Welcome to Harrison's Dine. Can I get you started with something to drink?" Her tone was respectful and cheerful, showing that she really enjoyed her job. Ethan smiled back and nodded, but Vanessa only glanced at her up and down. Vanessa's sharp eyes caught every small detail. Emma's simple ponytail, her modest uniform, and her slightly worn shoes. She didn't say anything at first, but her expression said it all. She looked unimpressed. When Emma walked away to get their drinks, Vanessa leaned forward and whispered, "Can you believe they let people like her work in such a high-end restaurant? She doesn't even look like she belongs here." Ethan frowned slightly. "Vanessa," he said quietly, "she's just doing her job. There's no need to talk like that." Vanessa shrugged and laughed softly. "I'm just saying, you'd think a place like this would have more polished staff." Ethan didn't reply, but inside he felt disappointed. He remembered how he used to work as a waiter when he was young, before his business took off. He respected people like Emma, those who worked hard with dignity, no matter their job title. But he didn't want to argue so early in the evening, so he stayed silent and forced a small smile. Emma returned soon after, placing 2 glasses of sparkling water on the table. "Here you go," she said kindly. "Would you like to hear the specials for tonight?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, please." But before Emma could continue, Vanessa interrupted, waving her hand. "We already know what we want. Just bring the best thing on the menu, okay? And make sure it's served hot. I don't want to wait too long." Her tone was sharp, and the words hung in the air like an insult. Emma blinked, surprised but still professional. "Of course, ma'am," she said softly. "I'll make sure everything's perfect." She gave a small smile and walked away, though Ethan could tell she was hurt. He turned to Vanessa. "You didn't have to talk to her like that," he said gently. Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. She's paid to serve us. It's her job." Ethan sighed quietly. He wanted to enjoy the evening, but something about Vanessa's attitude felt wrong. As they waited for the food, Vanessa kept glancing around the restaurant, commenting on people's clothes and looks. "Look at that couple," she whispered. "He's wearing last season's jacket. And that woman, she's clearly had too much work done." Ethan stayed silent again. He realized that Vanessa's beauty on the outside didn't match what was inside. When Emma returned with their dishes, she placed them gently in front of the couple. "Your meals, sir, ma'am," she said with a polite smile. "I hope you enjoy them." Ethan thanked her kindly, but Vanessa barely looked up. She poked her food with her fork and made a face. "Is this supposed to be the best dish? It doesn't even look appetizing," she complained loudly, making sure other diners could hear. Emma, still smiling, asked softly, "Would you like me to replace it, ma'am?" Vanessa gave a fake laugh. "No, it's fine. I'll try to survive it," she said sarcastically. Ethan felt embarrassed. The waitress didn't deserve this. Emma nodded politely and walked away, her posture straight and calm, even though anyone could see she was trying hard not to feel humiliated. Ethan leaned closer to Vanessa and whispered, "You're being unfair. She's doing her best. Vanessa waved him off again. You're too soft, Ethan. You always take everyone's side. But Ethan wasn't thinking about sides. He was thinking about kindness, respect, and how a person's true nature shows in moments like this. As the evening went on, Vanessa's arrogance continued to shine while Emma's patience and grace made a quiet impression on everyone around. Other diners glanced at their table, some shaking their heads at Vanessa's behavior. But Emma never lost her composure. She moved through the restaurant with quiet confidence, never once letting Vanessa's cruelty steal her peace. Ethan watched her and couldn't help but admire the dignity with which she handled herself. He didn't know it yet, but this same calm waitress, the one Vanessa looked down on, would soon reveal an identity that would leave them both speechless, especially Vanessa. That night, what began as a simple dinner date was already turning into something much deeper. A test of character, respect, and hidden truths waiting to be uncovered. Emma returned to the table with her usual warm smile, holding their dinner plates carefully. She placed them down gently, making sure everything looked perfect. Here you go, she said softly. I hope you enjoy your meal. Ethan thanked her with a kind nod, but Vanessa didn't even look up. She was too busy scrolling through her phone, checking her social media. The moment Emma turned away, Vanessa leaned toward Ethan and whispered, "Can you believe the way she talks? It's like she's pretending to be classy." Ethan frowned but stayed quiet. He didn't want to start another argument. Vanessa picked up her spoon and tasted the soup. She made an exaggerated face of disgust. "Ugh, this is terrible. It's cold." Emma, who was still nearby, turned back quickly. "I'm so sorry, ma'am," she said politely. "Would you like me to replace it?" Vanessa sighed loudly so that everyone around could hear. "Yes, obviously. Do I look like someone who eats cold soup?" The tables near them grew quiet. A few guests looked up, noticing how Vanessa was speaking. Emma kept her smile, even though her cheeks turned a little pink from embarrassment. "Of course, ma'am. I'll bring a fresh one right away." She took the bowl and walked to the kitchen, her steps calm, her head held high. Ethan watched her go and felt a sting of guilt. He knew Vanessa had gone too far, but saying something now might only make her angrier. When Emma came back with a new bowl, she carefully placed it in front of Vanessa. "Here you go, ma'am. Fresh and hot. I hope it's better this time." Vanessa picked up her spoon again, tasted it, and shrugged. "Still not great," she muttered. "Maybe the chef should take a cooking class." Emma smiled faintly and said, "I'm sorry it's not to your liking. I can ask the chef to adjust it again if you'd like." Ethan interrupted quickly. No, it's fine," he said. "Thank you, Emma." His voice was calm but firm, trying to stop Vanessa from saying anything more. Emma nodded respectfully and walked away again. Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Why are you defending her?" she asked, her tone sharp. Ethan looked at her seriously. "Because she's just doing her job. There's no reason to treat her badly." Vanessa leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "You're too soft, Ethan. People only respect you when you act above them. That's what makes you powerful." Ethan shook his head. "No," he said quietly. "Respect isn't earned by looking down on others. It's earned by how you treat people." Vanessa didn't reply, but she clearly didn't agree. After a few minutes, Emma returned to check on them again, as good waitresses always do. "Is everything all right with your meals?" she asked kindly. Ethan smiled. "Yes, thank you. Everything's perfect." But Vanessa had to add, "Finally, some service. Took long enough." Emma nodded politely, though her eyes showed a trace of sadness. She didn't deserve this treatment, and Ethan knew it. The tension at the table grew heavier with every passing minute. Ethan tried to change the topic, asking Vanessa about her day, her upcoming charity event, or the designer she was promoting online. But Vanessa's attention kept drifting back to the waitress. Every time Emma passed by another table, Vanessa whispered little comments. "She's too plain. Look how she talks to people like she knows them. She's clearly trying too hard." Ethan felt more and more uncomfortable. He looked at Emma, who continued working gracefully, never showing anger. She greeted guests, carried trays, and helped her coworkers with quiet efficiency. Despite Vanessa's rude behavior, Emma's kindness didn't fade. She was like a calm wave in a storm. A little later, Vanessa dropped her napkin on the floor. Emma, who noticed it, came over and bent down to pick it up. "Here you go, ma'am," she said gently. Vanessa didn't even say thank you. She just took it and turned her face away. Ethan could no longer hold back his frustration. "You could at least thank her," he said under his breath. Vanessa laughed. "For what? That's her job." Those words hit Ethan hard. He stared at her, trying to understand how someone could think like that. He had seen people struggle, work long hours, and fight for a better life. He respected that. But Vanessa didn't. To her, life was about luxury and status, nothing more. Emma returned a few minutes later with their dessert menus. "Would you like to try our special chocolate soufflé? It's our chef's favorite." Vanessa smirked. "Is it actually good? Or will it be another disappointment?" she asked sarcastically. Emma paused for a second but then replied kindly, "I believe you'll like it, ma'am. It's made fresh." Ethan smiled up at her. "We'll take one, thank you." Emma nodded and walked away again. When she was gone, Vanessa leaned forward and said in a mocking tone, "She acts so confident. I bet she thinks she's someone important." Ethan looked at her coldly. "Maybe she doesn't need to be someone important to deserve respect." Vanessa scoffed. "You're too kind for this world, Ethan. That's why people use you." Ethan said nothing after that. He just looked around the restaurant, watching how other people interacted, the laughter, the smiles, the kindness between strangers. He couldn't help but compare it to the way Vanessa had treated Emma all evening. It made him realize something was wrong, deeply wrong. When Emma brought their dessert, she set it down gently and said, "Enjoy your evening." Her voice was calm, her expression kind, but Ethan could see something else in her eyes, quiet strength. She wasn't just a waitress doing her job. There was a confidence and grace that made her stand out, even though Vanessa couldn't see it. Vanessa took one bite and said dramatically, "Finally, something decent." Ethan forced a small smile, but his heart wasn't in it. He could feel that this night was slowly turning into something bigger than a simple dinner. Emma walked away, unaware that soon, the same people who judged her would discover the truth about who she really was, and that truth would turn the entire evening upside down. The air in the restaurant felt heavier now, as if a secret was waiting to be revealed, and Ethan could sense that something unexpected was about to happen. Ethan sat quietly, trying to enjoy his meal, but Vanessa's attitude made it impossible. Every few minutes she found something new to complain about. If it wasn't the food, it was the music. If it wasn't the music, it was the people sitting nearby. She seemed to take pleasure in pointing out every flaw she could see, and each time she did, Ethan's patience wore thinner. He had always believed that kindness was a reflection of character, and what he was seeing in Vanessa that night was not what he expected from the woman he thought he loved. When Emma walked past their table again, Vanessa leaned back in her chair and said in a loud voice, "You'd think a restaurant like this could at least hire someone who knows how to walk properly. She moves like she's in a hurry to go home." Ethan's jaw tightened. He looked at Vanessa sharply. "That's enough," he said quietly, but there was firmness in his tone. Vanessa blinked, surprised by his sudden seriousness. "What?" she asked, pretending to be innocent. "I'm just being honest." "Honest doesn't mean cruel," Ethan replied. "She's working hard, Vanessa. You don't know what her day has been like." Vanessa laughed softly, rolling her eyes. "Oh please, don't tell me you feel sorry for her. You're acting like she's some kind of hero. She's a waitress, Ethan. She takes orders and serves food. That's it." Her words hit him like a slap. Ethan took a slow breath, trying not to lose his temper. "When I was younger," he said quietly, "I worked in a restaurant just like this. I washed dishes, carried trays, and served people who looked at me the same way you're looking at her right now. I worked hard for everything I have today. So yes, I respect people like her." Vanessa's face twisted in disbelief. "You? A waiter? You're joking, right?" "No," Ethan said seriously. "I started from nothing. I've seen what it's like to struggle, to work late just to pay rent. That's why I'll never look down on anyone doing an honest job." For a moment, Vanessa didn't know what to say. She stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then she laughed again, trying to brush off the tension. "Well, that's very touching," she said sarcastically. "But you don't have to play the saint every time someone serves you food." Ethan didn't respond. He looked away, his thoughts wandering. He began to notice things he had ignored before. The way Vanessa treated waiters, drivers, and even strangers on the street. He remembered moments when she mocked people for their clothes or their accents, times when she made rude comments just to feel superior. Maybe he had overlooked it because he wanted to believe she could change. But tonight, her true colors were shining too brightly to ignore. As Emma approached again with the bill for another table, Ethan couldn't help but notice how gracefully she handled herself. Even after being insulted, she remained polite, calm, and composed. When she smiled at an elderly couple and helped them with their coats, it was genuine. A kindness that came from the heart. Ethan admired that. It reminded him of his mother, who had taught him that dignity had nothing to do with wealth, only with character. Meanwhile, Vanessa leaned back and crossed her arms. "Why are you staring at her?" she asked suddenly. Ethan turned to her, startled. "What? You keep looking at that waitress," Vanessa said sharply. "What's so special about her? She's not even that pretty." Ethan frowned. "It's not about that. I'm just noticing how hard she's working. She treats everyone with respect, even when they don't treat her the same way." Vanessa scoffed. "You're really something, Ethan. You think everyone's good just because they smile." "No," Ethan replied quietly. "I think people's true nature shows in how they treat others, especially people they gain nothing from." Vanessa looked away, clearly annoyed. "You're making a big deal out of nothing," she said. But inside, Ethan felt a shift, something changing in how he saw her. Emma returned to refill their glasses. "Would you like more water, sir?" she asked kindly. "Yes, please," Ethan said with a gentle smile. She nodded and poured it carefully. "Thank you," he added sincerely. Vanessa rolled her eyes again. "You don't have to thank her for everything. It's literally her job." Emma smiled faintly, as if she had heard those kinds of comments before. "It's always nice to hear a thank you," she said softly, and then walked away. Ethan looked at Vanessa, and for the first time he didn't see beauty. He saw arrogance, pride, and emptiness. Her fancy clothes, expensive jewelry, and perfect makeup suddenly looked meaningless. It was as if her glamour had cracked, revealing something cold underneath. For the rest of the evening, Ethan stayed mostly silent. He watched how Emma worked and how Vanessa behaved, and the difference between them felt enormous. Emma, with her calm voice and gentle smile, seemed like a light in the room. Vanessa, with her sharp tongue and constant complaints, felt like a shadow spreading darkness wherever she went. When their meal was finally over, Vanessa asked for dessert, but quickly changed her mind, saying, "Never mind. I've lost my appetite." Ethan thought to himself that it wasn't the food that ruined her appetite. It was her own attitude. As Emma cleared their plates, she said politely, "Thank you for dining with us. I hope everything was okay tonight." Vanessa laughed under her breath but didn't reply. Ethan, however, said, "Everything was wonderful. You've been very kind." Emma's smile widened just a little, as if those words meant more than he realized. "That's very kind of you, sir," she said softly. As she walked away, Ethan couldn't shake a strange feeling. A mix of admiration for Emma and disappointment in Vanessa. He knew something had changed inside him tonight. He was beginning to see the truth clearly. What he didn't know was that the night was far from over. The quiet waitress he had defended was not just another worker. She was someone far more important, someone whose secret would soon turn the entire evening upside down and leave Vanessa completely speechless. The evening had started to quiet down. Most of the tables were now filled with laughter and soft conversations. But at Ethan and Vanessa's table, the air still felt heavy. Ethan was lost in his thoughts, replaying every rude comment Vanessa had made. He couldn't shake off the way she had treated Emma. Something deep inside him told him that the night wasn't over, that something important was still waiting to happen. Emma continued to serve customers with the same calm and grace as before. Even after all the insults, she didn't let her smile fade. She moved between tables, helping people, pouring drinks, and asking politely if everything was all right. Ethan admired her strength. There was a quiet confidence about her, something that didn't fit with the image of a regular waitress. She carried herself with dignity, and her gentle tone made people feel comfortable. Vanessa, on the other hand, had grown bored. She kept checking her watch and sighing loudly. "How long does it take to get the check around here?" she complained. Ethan looked at her, tired. "You could try asking politely," he said softly. Vanessa scoffed. "Why should I? That's her job. She should be paying attention." Just then, the restaurant's manager hurried out from the back. He looked nervous but excited, straightening his tie as he rushed toward the entrance. Ethan turned his head to see what was happening. The door opened, and an older man in an elegant suit walked in. His presence immediately caught everyone's attention. The waiters stood straighter, and even the chef peeked out from the kitchen to see. The man had a confident but kind face, with the calm authority of someone important. "Good evening, Mr. Harrison," the manager said respectfully. "It's an honor to have you here tonight." Ethan's eyebrows lifted slightly. He had heard that name before. Harrison's Dine. The restaurant's name came from this man. He was the owner and CEO of one of the most successful hotel and restaurant chains in the country. Ethan had seen him once at a business event, though they had never spoken personally. Vanessa's eyes lit up immediately. "Oh my God," she whispered, fixing her hair quickly. "That's the Mr. Harrison, the billionaire. He owns half the city." She looked excited, like she had just spotted a celebrity. Ethan simply nodded, watching quietly as Mr. Harrison walked gracefully through the restaurant, greeting staff and a few guests with a smile. As he walked by their table, his eyes fell on Emma, who was serving a nearby couple. The serious expression on his face softened instantly. "Emma!" he called warmly, his voice full of affection. The entire restaurant fell silent for a moment. Emma turned, surprised but happy. "Mr. Harrison," she said, smiling brightly. She quickly set down the tray and walked over. "I didn't know you were visiting tonight," he chuckled. "I just came to check how things were running. But I see you're still working hard, as always." There was pride in his voice, the kind that only came from someone who truly cared. Vanessa frowned, confused. "Wait," she whispered to Ethan. "How does she know him?" Ethan looked just as surprised. He watched as Mr. Harrison placed a hand on Emma's shoulder like a proud father. "How's your father doing?" Mr. Harrison asked warmly. "I haven't seen him in weeks. Tell him he still owes me that golf match." "He's doing well," Emma replied softly, smiling. "He's been busy with his new project, but I'll tell him you asked." Vanessa's mouth dropped open. She looked at Ethan, whispering frantically, "Wait, her father knows him? The owner of the restaurant?" Before Ethan could respond, Mr. Harrison turned toward them. "Ah, Mr. Miller," he said, recognizing Ethan. "It's a pleasure to see you again. I didn't expect to find you here tonight." Ethan stood up respectfully and shook his hand. "The pleasure's mine, sir," he said politely. Mr. Harrison smiled, then glanced at Emma. "I see you've already met my daughter," he said casually. The words hit like thunder. Vanessa's eyes went wide, and she froze in her chair. Ethan blinked, completely shocked. "Your daughter?" he repeated in disbelief. "Yes," Mr. Harrison said proudly. "Emma likes to work here sometimes. Insists on it, actually. She says it keeps her connected to the people who make this business run." The restaurant grew silent again. A few guests had overheard and were now whispering in surprise. Vanessa's face turned pale. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The same waitress she had mocked, insulted, and humiliated was the daughter of the CEO? Emma stood there quietly, her expression calm but serious. She didn't look smug or proud, only composed. Ethan looked at her in awe. It all made sense now, her confidence, her composure, the quiet strength in her eyes. She wasn't just any waitress. She was someone raised with wisdom and humility, someone who knew her worth without needing to prove it. Vanessa tried to recover. She gave a nervous laugh. "Oh, I didn't realize you were Mr. Harrison's daughter," she said quickly. "I was just joking earlier, you know. You're such a hard-working girl." Emma smiled politely, but her eyes were calm and knowing. "It's all right," she said softly. "You don't need to explain." Mr. Harrison looked between them, immediately sensing the tension. "Did something happen here?" he asked gently. Ethan shook his head quickly. "No, sir. Nothing serious. Your daughter was incredibly professional all evening." He looked at Emma with genuine respect, and she smiled back, appreciating his kindness. But Vanessa sat silently, staring down at her plate, her confidence completely shattered. Her earlier arrogance had vanished. The same woman she thought was beneath her was not only the daughter of one of the most powerful men in the country, but also someone with more grace and humility than Vanessa could ever imagine. The tables around them buzzed softly with whispers. Vanessa could feel eyes on her, and her cheeks burned with embarrassment. Ethan's disappointment in her was clear, and the silence between them felt colder than ever. Emma, meanwhile, stood tall. Not because of her father's wealth, but because of her character. She had handled insult with dignity and never once lost her kindness. Ethan couldn't help but feel a deep admiration for her. The truth had come out, and the entire atmosphere of the restaurant changed. What started as a night of arrogance and pride had turned into a moment of truth, one that neither Ethan nor Vanessa would ever forget. And for the first time, Ethan realized that real worth isn't measured by money or looks, but by the heart behind the smile. The restaurant went completely silent for a few seconds after Mr. Harrison's words. Felt like even the music had stopped playing. Everyone who had heard him was stunned. Emma, the calm, polite waitress who had served food all evening, was actually the daughter of the restaurant's owner and the CEO of a huge company. The same girl Vanessa had mocked again and again was, in reality, someone with more power, wealth, and respect than she could ever imagine. Ethan stood frozen for a moment, processing what he had just heard. He looked at Emma with new eyes, realizing that her grace and confidence now made perfect sense. Vanessa, however, couldn't even blink. Her mouth hung open, and her face turned pale as paper. For the first time that evening, she was speechless. Mr. Harrison looked around the table, not yet aware of the tension that filled the air. "I'm so glad Emma's taking her work seriously," he said proudly. "She's been helping the staff understand what real hospitality means. She insists on starting from the bottom. Says it teaches her more than any office ever could." Emma smiled shyly. "It's true, Dad," she said softly. "I like learning from real people, not just numbers and reports." Her words were humble and sincere, the complete opposite of Vanessa's usual tone. Mr. Harrison laughed. "That's my girl," he said warmly before turning to Ethan. "I hope she treated you well tonight. She's always been passionate about making every guest feel special." Ethan nodded quickly. "She's been wonderful," he said honestly. "Very professional, very kind." His words were genuine. He meant every one of them. But Vanessa shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Her mind was spinning. How could this be happening? She had spent the entire night belittling Emma, thinking she was just a simple waitress, someone beneath her. Now she realized she had been insulting the CEO's daughter, right in front of the man himself. Emma looked at Vanessa politely, her expression calm but serious. She didn't look angry or proud, only quietly aware. Vanessa tried to force a smile, but her hands trembled slightly. "Oh, Emma, I didn't know," she began awkwardly. "You should have said something earlier. I mean, if I'd known you were Mr. Harrison's daughter, I would have." Emma interrupted gently, her voice soft but firm. "It wouldn't have changed how I do my job, ma'am. I don't expect special treatment. Everyone deserves respect, no matter who they are." Her words hit Vanessa like a slap. She didn't know how to respond. Ethan looked at Emma, deeply impressed by her humility. She could have easily embarrassed Vanessa in front of everyone, but instead, she chose kindness. "Mr. Harrison, now noticing the uncomfortable silence, looked at his daughter with curiosity. "Is everything all right here?" he asked. Ethan quickly stepped in before Vanessa could make things worse. "Everything's fine, sir. We were just finishing up dinner. Your daughter has been nothing but amazing." Mr. Harrison smiled, clearly pleased. "I'm glad to hear that," he said. "Emma has always believed that character matters more than titles. That's what makes her special." Vanessa forced a small laugh. "Yes, she's very special indeed," she said weakly. She wanted to disappear. Her confidence, her arrogance, everything had melted away in front of the truth. She kept her eyes down, hoping no one would recognize her as the woman who insulted the boss's daughter. When Mr. Harrison moved to greet another guest, Ethan leaned closer to Vanessa. "You see," he said quietly, "that's why you should never judge people. You never know who they really are." His tone wasn't angry, but his disappointment was clear. Vanessa didn't answer. She just sat there, staring at her plate. For once, she had nothing to say. Emma, meanwhile, continued her work as if nothing had happened. She took orders from another table, helped an elderly man stand, and even comforted a crying child whose ice cream had fallen. Watching her, Ethan felt a sense of admiration growing stronger. She had all the qualities he respected: kindness, patience, humility, everything Vanessa lacked. A few minutes later, Mr. Harrison came back and smiled warmly at Ethan. "It's good to see you here, Mr. Miller. You're doing amazing things in your business. Maybe one day, you and Emma could work on a project together." Ethan smiled politely. "That would be an honor, sir." Vanessa forced another nervous laugh. "Oh yes, they'd make a great team," she said quickly, trying to sound cheerful, but her voice cracked slightly. Ethan didn't respond. He just looked at her with calm eyes. Eyes that said more than words ever could. The night continued, but the mood had completely changed. Vanessa no longer acted like the center of attention. She stayed quiet, playing with her food, while Ethan chatted respectfully with Mr. Harrison and Emma. The power dynamic had flipped completely. The woman who once looked down on a waitress was now sitting uncomfortably beneath the quiet strength of that same woman. After Mr. Harrison left to meet with the chef, Vanessa finally leaned forward and whispered, "Ethan, I swear I didn't know. I thought she was just..." Ethan stopped her. "That's exactly the problem, Vanessa," he said softly. "You thought she was just a waitress. You judged her because of her job, not her heart." Vanessa's face burned with shame. "I didn't mean to." "You did," Ethan said gently but firmly. "You meant every word. You only feel sorry now because you found out who she really is." Tears welled up in Vanessa's eyes, but she quickly wiped them away, trying not to ruin her makeup. She had never felt so small, so humiliated. The same pride that once made her feel powerful now made her feel trapped. Meanwhile, Emma returned to their table one last time to bring the bill. Her tone was polite as always. "I hope you enjoyed your meal," she said with a kind smile. Ethan looked at her gratefully. "Thank you, Emma. You've been wonderful." She nodded and replied softly, "It was my pleasure." Vanessa opened her mouth to speak but stopped. She wanted to apologize, but her pride wouldn't let her. All she could manage was a quiet, "Thank you." It was the first time she had spoken to Emma with a hint of respect. As Emma walked away, Vanessa finally understood how wrong she had been. For the first time in her life, she saw the difference between money and class. Emma didn't need fancy clothes or loud words to show her worth. Her dignity spoke louder than anything else. Ethan watched Emma disappear into the kitchen, his heart full of quiet admiration. Vanessa sat in silence, her world turned upside down. The truth had humbled her completely. Tonight, she had learned a painful but powerful lesson. That true value has nothing to do with wealth, but everything to do with character. When the dinner finally ended, Vanessa could barely look anyone in the eye. The sparkle that once filled her face had completely vanished. She walked beside Ethan, her high heels clicking against the marble floor, but her confidence was gone. The whispers around her didn't help either. Some guests had overheard what happened and were quietly gossiping. the arrogant woman who mocked the waitress only to find out she was the CEO's daughter. Every step Vanessa took felt heavier than the last. Ethan didn't say much as they walked to the car. The silence between them spoke louder than any words could. Vanessa kept glancing at him, hoping he would say something comforting, but he didn't. He just looked out the window, deep in thought. She could sense his disappointment, and it scared her more than anything. When they reached the car, Ethan finally broke the silence. "You know, Vanessa," he said quietly, "I've been with you for almost a year now. I've seen you at fancy parties, charity events, and luxury trips. But tonight I saw a side of you I wish I hadn't." Vanessa's heart sank. "Ethan, please." He raised a hand gently, not angry, but serious. "You didn't just insult a waitress, Vanessa. You insulted someone's dignity. You acted like kindness was beneath you. That's not the kind of person I want to be with." Tears formed in Vanessa's eyes. She grabbed his arm. "Ethan, I swear I didn't know who she was. If I had known she was Mr. Harrison's daughter." Ethan interrupted sharply. "That's the problem. You would have treated her differently only because of who she was, not because it's the right thing to do. That's not how decent people act." Vanessa's lip trembled. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just thought. You thought she was a nobody?" Ethan finished, his voice calm but firm. "You thought you were better than her because you have money, clothes, and a name. But let me tell you something, class doesn't come from wealth, Vanessa. It comes from respect." Vanessa sat in silence, his words piercing deeper than she wanted to admit. She looked down, fidgeting with her designer bracelet, the same one she had proudly flaunted earlier in the restaurant. Now it felt like a reminder of her shame. As they drove home, Vanessa kept replaying the night in her head. Emma's calm smile, her kindness even after being insulted, and the look of quiet strength in her eyes when the truth came out. She couldn't understand how Emma didn't lash out or humiliate her back. If their roles had been reversed, Vanessa knew she would have reacted with anger or pride. But Emma didn't. She stayed gentle, even when she had every reason not to. The car stopped in front of Ethan's house. Vanessa thought he would invite her in, but he didn't. He stayed in the driver's seat for a moment, staring at the steering wheel. "I think we need some time apart," he finally said softly. Vanessa's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" Ethan sighed. "I need to think about what kind of person I want by my side. I thought you were different, Vanessa, but tonight showed me that maybe we don't share the same values." She shook her head desperately. "Ethan, please, you can't just walk away over one mistake. I didn't mean any of it." He looked at her with sad eyes. "It wasn't just one mistake. It was who you became when you thought no one important was watching. That says a lot about who you really are." Vanessa's tears spilled over. "I'll change, Ethan. I promise I'll change. I'll apologize to her. Then do it," he said quietly. "Not for me. Do it because it's the right thing to do." With that, Ethan stepped out of the car. He didn't slam the door or raise his voice. He just walked away, calm, steady, and disappointed. Vanessa sat there, her heart breaking. For the first time, she realized that all the money and luxury she had meant nothing compared to losing someone who valued character over wealth. The next morning, Vanessa couldn't sleep. Her mind kept drifting back to Emma. She remembered the way Emma had served her food with a smile, even after being mocked. The memory burned inside her. Vanessa had always thought that power meant status, being above others. But Emma had shown her what real power looked like: kindness, patience, and dignity. Finally, Vanessa made up her mind. She got dressed, not in her usual flashy designer outfit, but in something simple, a white blouse and jeans. She wanted to face Emma, not as the billionaire's girlfriend, but as a woman who had done wrong. When she arrived at the restaurant, the morning staff was setting up. The manager looked surprised to see her. "Miss Vanessa? Can I help you?" "Yes," she said quietly. "I'm here to see Emma Harrison." Emma appeared a few moments later, wearing her waitress uniform, looking as calm and composed as ever. Vanessa froze for a moment before taking a deep breath. "Emma," she began, her voice shaking, "I owe you an apology. I was rude, arrogant, and cruel to you. You didn't deserve that. I'm truly sorry. Emma looked at her for a moment, studying her face. Then she smiled gently. Thank you, Vanessa. I appreciate your apology. But you don't owe me anything. Just remember, it's never too late to be kind. Those words hit Vanessa harder than any insult ever could. Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of realization. And maybe a little hope. She left the restaurant quietly, feeling lighter than before. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel the need to prove anything. That day, as she sat alone in her car, she whispered to herself, maybe this is the lesson I needed. And deep down, she knew it was true. Sometimes life humbles us in the most unexpected ways. Not to break us, but to teach us what truly matters. Vanessa had finally learned that lesson, and it changed her forever. Days passed after that emotional night, but the memories of what happened in the restaurant stayed with both Vanessa and Ethan. For Vanessa, every word Ethan had said echoed in her head. You acted like kindness was beneath you. It was the first time someone had truly made her see herself clearly, and it wasn't a pretty sight. She realized how her pride and arrogance had blinded her for years. She thought about Emma often, the way she had carried herself with calmness and grace, even when she was being insulted. That image wouldn't leave Vanessa's mind. Ethan, on the other hand, had been quiet and distant. He still cared for Vanessa, but something inside him had changed. He couldn't stop thinking about Emma either, but not in a romantic way. He admired her character. Her humility and strength had reminded him what real decency looked like. He wondered how someone so young could stay so grounded despite coming from a wealthy background. It made him question everything, his choices, his priorities, even his definition of success. One afternoon, Ethan got a call from Mr. Harrison himself. Ethan, my daughter told me you were kind to her that evening, Mr. Harrison said with a warm tone. I'd like to invite you to a business luncheon next week. There's a project I'd like to discuss with you, and I think Emma should be part of it. Ethan agreed. He knew this meeting wasn't just about business. It was a chance to show that he respected the Harrisons, especially Emma. When the day arrived, he dressed neatly and arrived early at the same restaurant where everything had happened before. As he entered, he noticed Emma arranging a few documents at a table. She wasn't in her waitress uniform this time. She looked elegant yet simple, dressed in a light blue dress, her hair tied neatly back. She smiled when she saw him. Mr. Miller, she greeted politely. It's nice to see you again. Ethan smiled back. Please just call me Ethan. And it's good to see you too, Emma. They sat down and soon Mr. Harrison joined them. The conversation started with business, future collaborations, company values, and leadership goals. But throughout the discussion, Ethan couldn't help admiring how Emma spoke. Her words were thoughtful, and her ideas were smart but humble. It was clear she didn't use her father's name to gain respect. She earned it on her own. When the meeting ended, Mr. Harrison excused himself for another appointment, leaving Ethan and Emma alone. For a moment, there was silence between them. Then Ethan said softly, Emma, I wanted to thank you. The way you handled everything that night. You were incredibly kind, even when you had every reason not to be. Emma smiled, her eyes calm. I don't believe in humiliating people, Ethan. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is whether they learn from them. Ethan nodded. You're right. And I think Vanessa is learning that lesson too. Emma tilted her head slightly. How is she? Ethan sighed. She's been quiet. I think she's reflecting on everything. She did come to apologize to you, didn't she? Emma nodded gently. Yes, she did. I could see she meant it. She looked different, softer somehow. Sometimes people just need a wake-up call to see things clearly. Ethan looked at her thoughtfully. You changed her life, Emma. Maybe mine too. She laughed softly. I didn't do anything special. I just stayed true to myself. The rest takes care of itself. Their conversation was calm but meaningful. For Ethan, it was like talking to someone who saw the world from a higher, wiser place. For Emma, it was comforting to meet someone who appreciated sincerity more than appearances. Later that evening, Ethan decided to call Vanessa. He didn't want to leave things unfinished. When she picked up, her voice was quiet but hopeful. "Ethan?" "Hey," he said gently. "I just wanted to check in. How have you been?" "I've been thinking a lot," she admitted. "About everything you, Emma, that night. I've realized how much I let my pride control me. I was so afraid of being seen as less that I ended up making others feel small." Ethan smiled faintly. "That's good, Vanessa. Realizing it is the first step. I met with a charity group yesterday," she continued softly. "I've decided to volunteer at the local shelter. I want to do something that actually matters. Maybe it's time I stop living just to impress people." Ethan's heart softened. "That's a good start. I'm proud of you for doing that." There was a long pause before Vanessa said quietly, "Do you think we'll ever be okay again?" Ethan hesitated, then said, "Maybe, but let's take things slowly. Trust takes time to rebuild. Vanessa, I don't know where we'll end up, but I do know I want both of us to grow, whether together or apart." Tears filled Vanessa's eyes again, but this time they weren't tears of regret. They were tears of understanding. "Thank you, Ethan," she whispered, "for still believing I can change." After the call, Ethan leaned back in his chair, feeling strangely peaceful. That night had changed all three of them in ways none of them had expected. Emma had taught them all that humility was the real mark of strength. Ethan had learned that integrity mattered more than success. And Vanessa, she was finally starting to rebuild herself, piece by piece, into someone better. The next morning, Vanessa visited the shelter she had mentioned. For the first time, she wasn't wearing expensive clothes or heavy makeup. She tied her hair back and helped serve food to people who had nothing. When an old woman smiled at her and said, "Thank you, dear," something inside Vanessa melted. She finally understood what true happiness felt like. Not the kind that came from attention or luxury, but the kind that came from doing good. At that same moment, Emma was walking through her office, talking to her team about a new initiative to support small businesses. She carried herself with quiet strength, a reminder that real power didn't need to shout. Ethan, meanwhile, stood by his window, watching the sunset. He smiled faintly, knowing that life had a strange way of teaching lessons, some through pain, others through people. What had begun as a night of arrogance and humiliation had turned into something much greater, a story of humility, forgiveness, and growth. And though none of them knew what the future would hold, one thing was certain. That night had changed them forever, and they would never look at people the same way again. A few months had passed since that unforgettable night in the restaurant, yet its memory remained alive in everyone's mind. Life had changed in quiet but meaningful ways, for Emma, for Ethan, and especially for Vanessa. The events of that evening had not only exposed arrogance and pride, but also planted the seeds of change, growth, and humility. Vanessa was no longer the same woman she once was. Her days of flaunting luxury, gossiping at parties, and looking down on others had faded away. She had started volunteering full-time at the community shelter, helping feed the poor and organize charity drives. At first, people doubted her sincerity, thinking it was just a show. But over time, they saw the truth. Vanessa worked hard, stayed humble, and never sought attention. She swept floors, served food, and listened to people's stories as if they truly mattered. And in those simple acts, she found something she had never known before: peace. One afternoon, while she was helping unpack food supplies, Vanessa saw a familiar face walk into the shelter: Emma. She looked just as graceful as ever, her smile warm and calm. Vanessa froze for a second, not out of fear this time, but surprise. "Emma," she said, standing up quickly. "I didn't expect to see you here." Emma smiled softly. "I heard about the work you've been doing here. I wanted to see it for myself, and maybe lend a hand." Vanessa laughed shyly. "You're welcome to join us anytime. We can always use someone like you." As they began working side by side, something remarkable happened. There was no awkwardness between them anymore. They talked like old friends. Vanessa told Emma how volunteering had changed her outlook on life. "I used to think happiness came from things," Vanessa admitted while stacking canned goods. New clothes, expensive dinners, attention. But now, I realize it comes from giving, from being useful. Emma nodded gently. That's something most people learn too late. I'm glad you discovered it now. Vanessa smiled. It's funny, isn't it? I thought I was above everyone that night, and yet you, the one I insulted, ended up teaching me the biggest lesson of my life. Emma laughed softly. Sometimes life has strange ways of teaching us, but what matters is that you listened. At that moment, Ethan walked into the shelter. He had been helping fund a charity project for low-income families, and he wanted to check on its progress. When he saw both Emma and Vanessa working together, he paused at the entrance, smiling quietly. Vanessa noticed him first. Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't seen him in weeks. "Ethan," she said softly, wiping her hands. He smiled. "Hey, Vanessa. You look happy." She laughed lightly. "I am. For the first time, I really am." Emma turned to greet Ethan as well, and the three of them stood together for the first time since that night. But this time, the air between them was peaceful. No tension, no pride, no bitterness. Just understanding. Ethan looked around the shelter. "I've got to say, Vanessa, this place looks great. You've really made a difference." Vanessa blushed slightly. "I couldn't have done it without the people here. They've taught me a lot about gratitude." Emma added kindly. "And you've taught them that anyone can change, no matter what their past looks like." Ethan looked at both women with quiet admiration. "You know, that night was rough, but I think it happened for a reason. It changed all of us." Vanessa nodded slowly. "It did. It broke my pride, but it built my heart." For a while, they simply stood together, watching the volunteers laugh and serve food to families. The room was filled with warmth, not from the lights, but from the spirit of people helping one another. Later, when Emma was leaving, Vanessa walked her to the door. "Emma," she said sincerely, "thank you, not just for forgiving me, but for inspiring me. I don't think I'll ever forget what you taught me." Emma smiled gently. "I didn't teach you anything you didn't already have inside. You just needed a reason to find it." Those words stayed with Vanessa long after Emma left. That evening, as Vanessa walked home, she passed by the same restaurant where everything had started. She stopped for a moment, looking through the glass window. The tables were full, the lights warm, and the laughter familiar. She could almost see her old self sitting there, dressed perfectly, smiling arrogantly, unaware of how her words were about to destroy her image. But that woman was gone now. In her place stood someone who had learned the true value of humility. She smiled to herself and whispered, "Thank you, life, for humbling me before it was too late." Meanwhile, Ethan had also found clarity. He realized that what he admired most in people wasn't wealth or beauty, but goodness. The kind of goodness Emma had, and the kind Vanessa was beginning to show. He met with both women from time to time, not as a boyfriend or businessman, but as a friend who shared the same belief. That character mattered more than status. Months later, Vanessa helped organize a charity gala. The same kind of event she used to attend for fun, but this time, for a cause that mattered. She invited Emma and Ethan as her special guests. The evening was filled with laughter, compassion, and genuine warmth. Everyone could see how much Vanessa had changed. When it was time for her speech, Vanessa stood on stage, a little nervous but glowing with sincerity. "A while ago," she began, "I made a mistake. I judged someone without knowing their story. That moment broke my ego, but it built my soul. I learned that true class doesn't come from wealth, but from how you treat people. Tonight, I stand here, not as the woman I was, but as someone who's learning to be better, one act of kindness at a time." The crowd applauded warmly, and Ethan smiled proudly from the front row. Emma clapped too, her eyes filled with pride and forgiveness. In that moment, Vanessa knew she had come full circle. What had begun as a night of shame had turned into the greatest lesson of her life. A story of redemption, kindness, and change. And as the lights dimmed and the music began, she realized something beautiful. Life always gives second chances, but it's up to us to become worthy of them.